Hearts Don't Stay Still at Sea. By Whispered Chapters. The sea never truly slept. Even on calm nights, it breathed, slow and vast, rolling beneath the hull like a living thing remembering older stories. And on the night Mara stepped aboard the Eleanor Gray, the ocean was restless, dark as ink, whispering warnings no one wanted to hear. The vessel itself bore the marks of survival. Weather-worn planks, salt-stained sails, rigging patched more times than anyone could count. She wasn't beautiful in the way new boats were. She was beautiful the way survivors were, scarred, stubborn, still afloat. Mara paused at the edge of the dock, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, heart thudding with the familiar ache of running toward something without fully knowing why. She hadn't planned on staying long. None of them ever did. She only knew she couldn't stay on land anymore. First time offshore? The voice startled her. Low. Steady. A man stood near the gangway, coiling rope with practiced ease. Wind tugged at his dark hair, already streaked with salt despite the calm evening. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. He smiled, not wide, not easy. The kind of smile earned, not given away. "You're still listening to the dock. You'll stop hearing it soon enough." She frowned. "And that's a good thing?" He shrugged. "Depends on what you're trying to leave behind." Mara didn't answer. She stepped aboard instead. That was how it began. There were 7 of them in total. 7 strangers bound by chance, need, and the promise of a crossing that would take weeks, long enough to matter. Elias was the quiet one, hands always busy, eyes always measuring the horizon. He had sailed most of his life, though he spoke of it like a burden rather than a gift. There was something in his posture, an old vigilance, that suggested the sea had already taken something from him. Lena laughed too loudly and too often, the sound bright against the groan of the hull. She carried grief like a secret she refused to let win. Thomas and June were siblings, sharp-tongued and inseparable, both running from lives that had narrowed too quickly. And then there was Owen, older than the rest, with weathered skin and eyes that had seen storms no map could chart. He captained the Eleanor Gray with reverence, as though she were an old friend rather than wood and canvas. They learned each other in fragments, through shared meals, aching muscles, stories offered halfway and then pulled back. Friendship came not as a decision, but as a necessity. Out there, survival didn't leave room for distance. The first storm came without ceremony. One moment the horizon lay open and pale, the next the sky darkened like a closing fist. Wind rose fast, snapping sails, tilting the deck just enough to unsettle the unsteady. "Reef the mainsail," Owen barked. Mara barely had time to register fear before it arrived, sharp and breathless. Rain struck sideways. Waves slammed against the hull with bone-deep force. She slipped once, hands scraping wood, panic flaring. Then arms caught her. Elias. His grip was firm, grounding. "I've got you," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. She nodded, clinging to him as the boat pitched violently beneath them. Their bodies pressed close, not in romance, not yet, but in instinct. 2 humans bracing against something vast and indifferent. The storm lasted hours. By the time it passed, everyone was soaked, trembling, and irrevocably changed. That night, they sat below deck in silence, lantern light flickering across tired faces. Someone passed around a bottle. Someone else laughed, shaky and relieved. Mara realized then that fear had softened something inside her. That she trusted these people, not because she knew them, but because she had survived with them. And when her gaze met Elias's across the narrow cabin, something unspoken lingered there. Days blurred into rhythm. The sea stretched endless and blue, then gray, then violent again. Nights grew colder. The world reduced itself to wind, water, and the steady creak of the Eleanor Gray. With isolation came honesty. Lena spoke of the child she'd lost. Thomas admitted he was afraid of returning home. Mara shared less, but felt more. She listened. She watched. She noticed the way Elias stood lookout long after his shift ended, eyes scanning the dark like it might rise up and strike. One night, she joined him. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Too quiet," she said. He huffed softly. "Funny thing to say out here." They stood shoulder to shoulder, the cold forcing closeness neither commented on. "I used to sail with my brother," Elias said suddenly. "He didn't make it back." Mara didn't ask how. She knew better. "I stayed on land for years after," he continued. "Thought the sea had taken enough." "And yet," she said gently. "And yet," he echoed. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The storm that followed was different. Bigger. Meaner. The sky fractured with lightning, thunder rolling like a warning bell. Waves towered, crashing over the deck, dragging loose gear into the black. The Eleanor Gray screamed as would strained against water. "Mayday!" Owen shouted into the radio. Static answered. A line snapped. The mast shuddered violently. Mara was thrown hard, breath knocked from her lungs. She tasted blood. Panic clawed her chest. Elias reached her again, always him, dragging her upright as water surged around their legs. The boat listed dangerously. "We're taking on water," June cried. They worked until muscles burned and fear blurred time itself. Hands raw, lungs aching, hearts pounding. At one point, a wave tore across the deck, slamming Mara into Elias. He wrapped himself around her instinctively, shielding her as they hit the rail. For a breathless moment, they were pressed together, foreheads touching, eyes locked. "If we make it," she whispered, voice shaking. "We will," he said fiercely. And she believed him. Dawn came soft and stunned. The storm retreated, leaving wreckage and silence in its wake. The Eleanor Gray floated wounded but alive. Below deck, they tended injuries and exhaustion. The air smelled of salt, blood, and relief. Mara sat wrapped in a blanket, shivering, not from cold, but from the realization that she had nearly died. Elias knelt in front of her, hands gentle as he checked the bruise blooming along her ribs. "You scared me," he said quietly. She met his gaze. "You scared me too." A beat. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. The kiss was not desperate. It was earned. Soft at first, then deeper, two people acknowledging what the sea had already decided. Around them, the boat creaked, alive and watching. They didn't rush it. Love at sea didn't allow illusions. It was built in shared watches, whispered conversations, hands finding each other in the dark. They learned each other's fears, each other's scars. Sometimes the sea was calm, sun glinting like promise. Sometimes it raged. Through it all, they stayed close. Hearts didn't stay still at sea. They shifted, adapted, learned to beat in time with the waves. When land finally appeared, green and solid and waiting, it felt unreal. They stood together at the rail, the journey written into their faces. "Everything changes now," Mara said. Elias took her hand. "Only if we let it." The Eleanor Gray sailed on, carrying with her the proof that love, like the sea, was never meant to be still.
Thank you for staying all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe so I can keep more stories of every kind coming to you.